This is the Politics of Everything, and I'm your host, Amber Daines. Welcome to the podcast where we want to discuss the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment to equality, and much more. Our guests are experts in their field or topic of choice, even if you've not yet heard their name. This is a bipartisan podcast, so while we love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate, by no means is this a one-sided forum for any one political view. So please listen up and enjoy the politics of everything. Narelle Anderson is the founder and managing director of the award-winning Envirobank Recycling, Australia's most innovative reverse vending machine solutions and automated recycling depots. She's an accomplished entrepreneur, and her vision is to change the way Australians and the world recycle using technology and rewarding consumers for the good they do. Founding Envirobank Recycling in 2008 to incentivise recyclers, Narelle introduced the concept of reverse vending technology to Australia. As a born entrepreneur, Narelle has owned multiple businesses and has built a distinguished career in the waste industry. In 2000, she became the first Aboriginal woman to solely own a waste management company. And in 2001, she was elected by her peers as the first female president of the Sydney chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organisation, or EO, a dynamic global network of more than 7,300 business owners in 42 different countries. In 2015, she was also voted Australia's top 50 influential women entrepreneurs, and today she's talking about the politics of recycling. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow.
Such an intro.
I know, my goodness.
You don't look old enough to have done all that stuff, Narelle. Come on.
Thank you. You're so kind.
So growing up, how would you describe your childhood in a few sentences?
Well, I certainly was loved as a child, but at times my childhood was a little troubling, and I did feel older than my years as a child. I know that sounds strange, and I would often feel as though I was an adult observing a child. And some of those observations and learnings, I guess, through my childhood shaped me as an adult.
So did you have a career dream growing up? Like, did you want to be a ballerina or an astronaut, or was there something in your sort of education as a kid that you thought, yeah, that's what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I actually thought one of my first things that I wanted to do was I wanted to be an air hostess, and because I thought that sounded really cool. And then I got to go on a plane. My friend's parents took me on a plane, and then I decided that I didn't want to be an air hostess after that. I felt a bit claustrophobic. And then I wanted to be a lawyer, and I probably still want to be a lawyer, actually. Maybe I'll get around to that one day.
To add to the list.
Add to the list. But yeah, I didn't know that I wanted to run a recycling company, that's for sure.
Well, it's sort of not on those sort of childhood kind of career counselling, graphs that they give you. They're all very much more.
No, definitely wasn't part of Careers Week.
Definitely not. So your early career, what did that involve, and what were some of the key lessons that you remember from, say, your 20s?
Well, I guess even taking it back before my 20s as a child at school, I have just always been a person that is a very determined individual and likes to do things that other people say can't be done. So as a child, I remember in year 5, we were supposed to learn an Australian poem, and I told my 5th grade teacher that I wanted to learn The Man from Snowy River, and she told me that I couldn't learn that poem because it was way too long and I should choose a different poem. So I chose My Country by Dorothea McKellar, and I recited that poem. And then when I finished, standing in front of my year 5 class, I said, and now I'm going to do my second poem, which was The Man from Snowy River. And I remember looking at the faces of my classmates, with their mouths wide open, thinking, my God, what is she doing?
She's done double.
Why on earth would she do that? And I just did it because I had a passion for it, and the teacher told me that I wouldn't be able to do it. And really that then became something that's become a career theme for me, really. In all of the jobs that I've had, if I've ever been told, no, you won't be able to do that, or you can't do that, that has just made me more determined to have a go. And that's what I'm doing today, still having a go.
Absolutely. So first of all, it seems that you owned a promotional business and then CBD Enviro Services and now Envirobank. So how did you even get into that entrepreneurial world? Did you have some mentors or did you just see an opportunity? How did it really happen for you?
Well, my very, very, very first business was actually a kissing business.
What?
I did teach the kids in our street how to kiss.
How old are these kids, by the way? This sounds a little...
And not by kissing them myself, but by conducting classes. I watched, I think, a romance show on television and thought that, kids should learn how to kiss. So
it is a life skill, I guess.
It is a life skill. I'm proud to say that the kids in Moore Street are all probably very great kissers these days. That was really my first business, but I ended up with a promotional company because I worked for a promotional company and just saw that there was an opportunity and decided that I'd have a go myself. How
old were you?
I had that promotional company when I was about 19, 20.
Wow, that's young.
And it was, and then
Very
I fell off my horse. Well, the gentleman that I worked for he was, I was doing some work for him and he said that he would give me a pay rise and then he didn't give me a pay rise.
Oh.
And I felt that was very unjust. And so I decided that I'd go off and do something myself. And so I did. And I was just really doing some small events and providing staff for some small events. And then sadly, I had a riding accident and crushed my vertebrae. So that was the end of my business. And then after that, I went on to work for Hallmark Cards. And I worked for them for a number of years, and that's where I found my passion for sales. And really, that organisation that I worked for was really one of the organisations and the jobs that I had that shaped who I wanted to be as a business person. That organisation was very kind to me, and it was a really supportive organisation. Way back then, where today it's kind of the given, but it wasn't the given back then, to have organisations that were very supportive of women in the workplace, and so that was one of the companies that shaped who I am. And then CBD Enviro Services, my entree into the waste management business was I knew the gentleman that owned that business, and I ended up working for him. And long story short, he decided that he wanted out, and I ended up buying the business from him. I didn't have any money because I left school at a very young age. So I kind of talked him. He really wanted to get out and I really wanted to get in. So I did a deal with him that I'd pay him off over a period of time. And if I couldn't pay him off, then, then he could come back and take it off me, and I was able to pay him off.
That's incredible. And so what is it about the waste industry that for you has really sparked that continued entrepreneurial streak? Because you could go on to have done something else after that, but you sort of stuck with it.
I did because, I became quite passionate about recycling and waste and waste management, and it's a super interesting space. And when I first joined the waste management industry, again, there weren't a lot of women in the waste management space, but it was quickly evolving, and more women were, participating in key roles. And I just really enjoyed the work, and I really enjoyed the mission of, cleaning up the country and making sure that things go to the right place and thinking about our future. At the time, I didn't have any children, but just really thinking about the future of the planet. And, I'm connected to that. I'm connected to the earth by my culture. But it's just become a passion for me, and one that, keeps me awake at night. We started before this podcast talking about the time that I wake and go to sleep, and I don't count the hours because it is such a passion for me.
It's incredible. Like most entrepreneurs, I guess that's how you keep running when you're nothing in the tank. Look, you are the great niece of the late Senator Neville Bonner, and your own Indigenous background has clearly made you passionate about Indigenous welfare, and you've achieved so many firsts as an Indigenous woman and entrepreneur in Australia. You've been quoted as saying, "My culture makes me a custodian of the land, so cleaning up the country seems a natural fit." So how does that impact your desire to sort of, I guess, balance that entrepreneurial side, working in really a white culture, to what is the truth for your people as well?
I think certainly in today's environment, we're in a unique point of time, and that is that governments all over the globe actually, and now all over Australia, are starting to introduce a container deposit legislation, which is about paying people to recycle. And that legislation underpins really what I'm doing at the moment. And why does that connect back to culture for me is if you want people to do the right thing, then you either fine them, reward them, or penalise them. And this is an incentive-based recycling and what is exciting about that for Indigenous community is that takes jobs into community as well. So that is the thing that keeps my fires burning, really to make sure that opportunities get out into community where they don't currently exist. And as a child, I didn't live in a community as a child. I lived in the southern suburbs with my parents, but we were taken on the weekends to the boys. It was called the boys' home. It wasn't a boys' home, but it was run by the brothers, and it was an Aboriginal community. We were taken there on the weekends with my parents to see uncles and aunties and what have you. And I just again remember observing as a child how different opportunities were, and that really is my great passion now, to make sure that through my business and the connections that I have, that I'm able to make opportunities for other Aboriginal people.
So from December 1st last year, people in New South Wales have been able to get 10 cents for every beverage container they recycle via your machines, Envirobank machines that you've designed. And the arrival of container deposit legislation in New South Wales took a long time. So you've been in this business 10 years. I imagine at the time you didn't think it was going to take 10 years to get to this point. What's been the journey like for you? And at this point, where do you think we're at with this reverse recycling mindset?
Yeah. So I guess, to start, good things come to those who wait. And it has taken an extraordinarily long time. And I think the reason that container deposit legislation now it seems to have momentum is partly to do with the issues that we have in China, and making sure that we have opportunities to recycle this material that are local and not overseas. And the material that comes from a container deposit scheme is first class material, so it can go back into bottle to bottle, which is
such as, what would be some of the materials we're talking about?
So we're talking about your water bottles, which are made out of PET, and if they come from a container deposit scheme, they can be made into another bottle again. Same with aluminium cans, which can be infinitely recycled, and glass as well. So what comes out of a container deposit scheme is a nice clean recycling stream, so it enables that to go back into that bottle. What comes out of a recycling stream that comes from a MRF, a material recovery facility, because it's mixed with lots of other things, is contaminated, so it doesn't have the same value. So that really then has meant that there's been an opportunity for technology to enter the marketplace. And the reverse vending technology that we have here at Envirobank is technology that comes from the States. But we also run very large automated counting centres, and that technology comes out of Denmark. So, for us, it was really about solving a problem with technology, solving a traditional problem with technology, and really improving a customer's experience. And technology is something that, 10 years ago was like, oh my gosh, that's extraordinary, but now, it's really expected that we do things in a technical way, and that's what reverse vending machines do, and that's what our large high-speed counting centres do. It's just about improving the customer experience.
And how do you educate the market about this? Because not everyone's going to know that this exists.
Well, the container deposit legislation that we have here in Australia, we have New South Wales, which started on the 1st of December, and South Australia, which has been going for 35 years, and the Northern Territory, which has been going for about 5 years, and Queensland starting on the 1st of November. The legislation is slightly different in each of those states, so it really is about educating the community in each of those states what the rules are. The rule that's the same is that the containers are worth 10 cents each. And for the consumer, that's the same in every state. For the operators, though, the guidelines are a little different in every state. But it's all about advertising, marketing, promotion, and education. What you see when you have put a bounty on the containers is people very quickly figure out how they're going to return them for recycling.
They are motivated, therefore.
They are motivated, and we seem to have a flurry at the moment of young girls who are recycling to save money for puppies.
Really? How do you know this, Narelle? Like, what do you do? You get some spies out there with the machines what are they talking about?
No, because it's not all, for us, it's not all machines. We run large, high-speed counting centres, but we are, super passionate about engaging young people. And really this is, everybody in New South Wales probably remembers Cash for Cans. So this is really bringing Cash for Cans back. And we just ask the question when people come to our business, what do you do? And I have young children that write to us and tell us what they do. And, we send out kits because I want to encourage young people to be entrepreneurs. And, what I say often is really cashing in your cans is really one of the few opportunities that you can run your own business without any startup capital. You just need your arms and legs and a bag to put your containers in and a map to find your way to Envirobank. So there's lots of young people doing great things and lots of older people too doing great things with the Cash for Containers money. So
maybe it's that middle ground that needs some work by the sounds of it. You've got the young, you've got the older. What about people our age?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely opportunity for improvement there.
Are we really time poor? Is that part of it, or is it just not a willingness?
I think it's time poor. It hasn't been front of mind for me. Obviously, I'm in the business, but for our generation, and it's really our children and our parents. So our children are very motivated and very connected to their future and what's going to happen. And our parents, obviously, because they didn't have. And so they're very mindful about how they consume and how they spend. This is a very broad statement, so it's certainly not true of everyone, but there does seem to be a gap in the middle.
Lots of work to do, perhaps. You are on a couple of boards and includes ACOR, which is not the hotel group, everyone, but the Australian Council of Recyclers, and it's the peak industry body for recycling. How did that come about? Like, is a lot of people who will listen to this perhaps are looking at board roles for the future, and you've been on a number of boards over the years, and is it because there's very few people at the top in this industry and you stand out? I mean, how do you actually get those sorts of positions?
Well, I've been in the waste management and recycling space now for 17 years. So obviously I've got a fair amount of experience and quite well known within the industry. I've ticked a few boxes. I was invited to join the ACOR board because of my experience really in this container deposit scheme, and that was something that was emerging. So that was the reason that I was invited, and actually they didn't have any women, so that's another
excellent
reason.
Yes, that
and
works well for you.
They didn't have an Aboriginal woman, so there you go. That's 3 boxes. Tick, tick, tick. But when you participate in an industry for a certain amount of time, then it's always wonderful to be acknowledged for that experience. But my advice to anybody that's seeking out board roles is really, I consider my role on that board to also be making a contribution to industry as well. And that's, it's my business is a passion for me, but it's also important to participate in the conversations that are shaping the industry that you operate in, if of course you have the experience. So if you've got the experience, then I would say put your hand up and go and seek out a board. They don't always have to be in the industry though. I get invited to a lot of different boards, and obviously I have a lot of different experience now in business. But you have to find something that you're passionate about.
Totally. It has to align with your values, doesn't it, as well, and where you want to give back to. So there's been a lot of media interest recently in Australia about this idea that we have been exporting waste to China, which will be no secret to you, but for some of us was a bit of a shock, I have to say. You put it in your local recycling bin and you just think, oh, that's going to somewhere in Australia that's going to be recycled and so forth. Now China's actually come out and banned a lot of foreign waste. What do you make of this? Is this an opportunity for operators like yourself, and where do you see that moving?
Well, certainly it's a big problem in Australia that now that China has closed the door, so to speak, it really is a problem because a lot of our product was being exported to China and to other markets. But in that problem, obviously there's a fantastic opportunity, and that is that we start to have a look at our reprocessing opportunities here in this country. And, we do have big reprocessors here, but there's a great deal more opportunity. And what I think will happen out of this, and certainly what I hope will happen out of this, is that it gives, it's a shot in the arm for the manufacturing industry in this country. And
to do what though? What do you hope?
To reprocess the material into other products, because at the moment it's going overseas and then it's being reprocessed into other products because, our labour laws and all sorts of other restrictions that we have here that aren't necessarily conducive to manufacturing. We've seen a lot of the car companies take their business offshore, for economic reasons. So I'm hoping that this is, a wake-up call for government, if you like, that, we should look at our manufacturing industries and how we can support industry so that we can bring some manufacturing and reprocessing back to this country. Container deposit legislation is a great, it's a great legislation also because it does clean up the recycling, which makes it much easier to reprocess back into bottles. And one of the big beverage companies, I understand, and quite a few of them have made a commitment that they will be looking at their packaging and only purchasing bottles that have been made from recycled materials. So
that would be a great step.
All of those things, tend to shape the industry and the business and the opportunity.
So what's your next big vision for your company and beyond?
Well, we are growing rapidly as each market opens up the container deposit legislation. So we'll be in Queensland soon. And then I understand that Western Australia are starting their container deposit legislation, and Victoria will be.
It's amazing it's not national though. Like as you're saying this and, South Australia 30, 40 years ago and now New South Wales, I just had this pang as someone who lives in New South Wales. Oh my gosh, what have we been doing?
I know it is. It should be a national scheme. And
absolutely. I can't get my head around it.
As an operator, the rules are different in each state. So that on its own is challenging. And, it's not just challenging for us, it's challenging for the other participants in the scheme. So if we could all sing from the same hymn book, that would be awesome. But, that's not the way it is at the moment. But I do see, possibly in the next 10 years, we will evolve into a national scheme. And if we do that, then that will bring some efficiencies into the process as well, which will make more opportunities for businesses like mine and others.
So I have a couple of questions I ask all my guests, and you're not going to escape without getting asked these today. Most of us have influencers or mentors in our journey, in our career, in our life that have helped us. If so, maybe one or two that have been very, important to you, and what have they taught you about success and life?
Well, I think the first one was really that 5th grade teacher that told me that I wouldn't be able to do something.
Yeah, thank goodness for her.
Thank goodness for her. Her name was Mrs. Morgan.
Never forget, do you?
No, and I actually ended up having her 2 years in a row. So really, if I saw her, I would thank her because that was really the conversation that ignited the fire in my belly that you can do anything if you believe in yourself. Along the way, then I've been a member of that entrepreneurs organisation for a long time. So within that group, a number of peers that have become personal friends. In particular, a very close friend of mine, Emma Isaacs, who runs a group called Business Chicks, and now that's a global women's networking group. So she's both a personal friend and one of my mentors, and a girl by the name of Maria Sitka, who runs a business overseas. So through the EO organisation, I've made some wonderful connections and mentors. And then I have, the traditional mentors that you've had along the way. A lady by the name of Lynn Scott, who mentored me when I owned CBD Enviro Services through a Westpac mentoring program, and she owned a wardrobe business, which was kind of, I had a waste management business and she had a wardrobe business. But,
there you go.
So
quite opposite in some ways,
but so she was in manufacturing, and so she chose me from the group because she said I was doing something that was closer to her industry than a lot of the others, and she was very she taught me to run certain processes and to think about, business planning in a certain way. And she held me to account, and, I wasn't allowed to go to the mentoring meeting unless I'd done my homework from before. And I really appreciated that. She gave me great
bit discipline there.
Structure and discipline. And then again, through EO, a good friend of mine that had run a big advertising agency, we're still connected. And then somebody that I guess people probably don't always say, but my husband is also a very accomplished entrepreneur, and somebody that I seek counsel with quite often.
Well, that's handy. You can do that in the living room, can't you?
I do, and he, so there's some things that I don't seek counsel with. Obviously, there's some things that I'm completely, but he is a very accomplished entrepreneur, and so I often run things past him.
You've got a great network there to help you do that. So to wrap up, what would be your biggest tip, 1, 2 or 3 tips for us all to do our bit in the politics of recycling?
Well, it's really actually very simple, and it is really about being mindful about what you put into the right bin. Now, there isn't a council in Australia. Well, that's not true. There's a couple of councils in Australia that don't do recycling, but most of them do. So it really is about putting the product in the right bin. And if you don't know which bin, then Google it. Or call Siri, as my son is doing now. Siri knows everything.
Everything more than mum sometimes.
More than me. Apparently. So it is about education and being mindful about what you put into the bin, because once the bin is contaminated, then that sends that recycling on a completely different path. So keep your general waste separate from your recycling is really the number one thing to do.
And it's not that hard, really.
And it's not that hard. And if you don't know how to do it, ask a young person. Like, seriously, ask somebody in year 2 or 3, because they're
all over
on
it.
top of it, and they'll be sure to tell you where it's meant to go.
Oh, it's been terrific to have you on the show. Until next time, you've been listening to The Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines. There will be some details of how to connect with Narelle Anderson and Envirobank on our show notes. Keep well. Thanks for listening today. If you've enjoyed The Politics of Everything, we thrive on feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network and your friends and family. I'm also always on the hunt for fabulous new guests, so if you've got a view to share and an idea how to get our listeners excited, please email me at amber@bespokecoms, that's BESPOKECOMMS.com.au, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Until next time.